Alright, ladies and gentlemen. So, just a few things before we get started. This could be a long one. And usually, whenever I say that, it ends up becoming a long one and, at the same time, perhaps not nearly as long and stressful as I anticipated, which is kind of the point of this episode. Now, just a few announcements. A friend of mine just lost their husband. It was very sudden, and I feel really bad. I would feel bad for anyone. I feel particularly bad for this person who, without getting into too many details about their personal life, there's just an immeasurable good that you can do as a person when you show someone kindness. And this person in particular has shown me nothing but kindness. And I followed this person on Instagram for a while before, we started talking because they had posted something, a caricature of them and their husband, doing stuff. And I thought that was great. And I'm like, hey, I publish my own comics, so if I can ever be of help, because I saw that they did other things, and I mean that's kind of how a friendship started, and we saw that we had similar interests, similar senses of humor, and so we would share things back and forth. I'd find something, they would find something, and the beauty of social media is, to be able to share your interests in a constructive manner, because there are so many uses of social media that are not constructive. So this was a nice break from that, aside from some people reaching out to me, constantly asking me for free work, and I showed that particular group of people the door, but in the nicest possible way, saying, I can't draw stuff for free. I can't afford to. But this person in particular has two young children. Needless to say, it's a very difficult time for them, as it is for all of us, but in particular this person. So I want to ask two things. I'm going to put in the comments on Facebook, and I will do this when I upload this episode to YouTube. I put the GoFundMe information in the comments for those of you that are able to donate if you can. No pressure, because I know we're all suffering in some way from this awful pandemic, myself included. I've been out of work for several months. But if there is any way that you can donate to help my friend out with funeral expenses, I would appreciate it, and they would too. And secondly, I would like to observe a moment of silence for Todd Couch. That's the name of my friend's husband. So we'll do that, and then we'll come back and we'll start. We at Drezen Media would like to extend our condolences to Todd's wife, Perdita, and children, Tegan and Ariel, during this difficult time. If you can donate to help with funeral expenses, there is a link in the comments. Now, another thing, and this is going to lead into the subject of today's episode. I'm not going to say where because, I don't want to make it seem like I'm calling anyone out, because I'm not. I see a lot of talent in all the comic groups that I'm a part of. When I say comic groups I'm a part of, specifically the ones where it's people anywhere in the world that are drawing comics, not necessarily people that collect comics. Because I'm a member of those groups too, but that's not my focus. Now, being a comic book artist myself, all self-published, it's been no easy task to get to, as of today, my 247th consecutive week of publishing webcomics. 247 entries. I honestly didn't think I was going to make it to the 4th week, because there was a lot of pressure. And I see a lot of posts, and I won't say where, because it doesn't matter where. It could be anywhere, where the person who's posting is very visibly frustrated with getting started. That's okay. Getting started is always the hardest part. Now let me show you some examples. Back in 2001, I began actively pursuing an animation career. This is a copy of a short film that I made then called When the Doberman Calls. It stars Lucky Zilla, and I made it myself in my parents' basement with a Tyco video cam and an older computer that had a BS version of Microsoft PowerPoint. So I didn't have a job. I was 16 years old, and I'm making animated shorts on my parents' computer and stretching the limits of each of the programs. So I thought, hey, maybe I could sell this on home video. It was a silent film. It was in black and white, and it had pirated music. But I made a cover for it. I made copies of it because I figured out how to do that. Needless to say, I had no means of doing some assembly line method kind of thing. Because, I forget the tape. And I'm sure some of you have done this too. You can't read this. I'm surprised that this thing has lasted nearly 20 years, let alone, I don't know, after I made it. And somehow it's still intact. And here's another thing. I made a live-action Lucky Zilla short back in 2007. At that time, I was learning graphic design. I was going to school for it, and I learned about page layout. At this particular time, I had no idea what I was doing. I was writing this by hand. And somehow my handwriting was legible on here. Because it counted, really. But this was a failure. The live-action short was a failure. Because I was experimenting. Constantly. Let me see. Let me see a second. But let me show you one other thing, and then we'll start getting going. This right here is the very first Lucky Zilla comic strip. Through all the failures that I had with Lucky Zilla, there was one thing that I had succeeded in right from the very beginning, and I had totally forgotten about it. This right here was the difference between me getting started in webcomics and me just sticking with animation, which was kind of sort of getting me nowhere, even though I had a film award to my name and appearances on network television. What makes this book, this comic strip work, where all of my other endeavors up to that point had failed, is situations. I find so many people who are looking to get started in comics thinking about the big picture. And I'm guilty of that myself. To this day, I'm guilty of that myself with certain other projects. I think because of my experience, I can just, add another product to my repertoire, which I have regularly. Since the launch of Drezen Media 2 years ago, I've done t-shirts, I've done a secondary web series, a scripted web series called The Lazy Sunday Spin that ended after 2 episodes. I also did a second weekly strip that had nothing to do with Lucky Zilla. It was a totally new creation, Raphael Not a Ninja. And that lasted 8 weeks. I'm very proud of it. It was my first starring LGBTQ character, a plus-size lesbian cartoonist named Raphael Driscoll, who loves dogs and draws a webcomic, incidentally. And she was a fun character to write, and at the same time I was terrified because I'm like, am I doing this right? And the response that I've gotten to her was very positive. The trouble was there just weren't enough hours in the day. At least I had Lucky Zilla, otherwise I would be, stuck right where I was initially. Now, again, let's look at that 1996 Lucky strip. I went from start to finish in 11 panels. And I mean, there's something here, even in these crude drawings, which I was 11 years old when I drew this. The Lucky strip itself didn't start officially until here, Drug Bust, on October 18th of 2015. Now, I was at my parents' house doing laundry because the apartment I lived in at the time wouldn't allow me to use the laundry room. I mean, it was in a house, and I was paying decent money to live there, but for all intents and purposes, I was doing laundry. Laundry takes hours. So I needed something to keep myself busy. I had left my computer at home, otherwise I would have been working on some animation stuff. So then I started thinking about Lucky Zilla and, situations he might be in that don't necessarily require that I tell a story from beginning to end. And from there, I drew like 5 different scenarios, all roughed out. Let me see if I can bring them up for you, which I will. Okay. This right here is a rough for the second Lucky Zilla weekly strip, microwaved. Unfortunately, the roughs for the very first one, Drug Bust, were in a sketchbook that unfortunately I no longer have. I don't know what happened to it. The art is missing, the original art. But if it turns up, I might actually frame it. This is for the, I believe it was the third strip, Pink Shirt. These didn't have actual titles at the time, because I didn't really start giving them titles until a little bit later. This is Angry Prissy Biker. This was a little bit... This was maybe like 6 or 8 weeks later, even though the rough is dated 10/18/15. As is Pink Shirt, as is Microwaved. Yeah, there we go. It's up here. Let's see. Even the first strip of 2016, You Unlicensed CAD, is dated 10/18/15, although it was published much later. This right here was from the same sketchbook, which the original, the very first drug bust roughs came from, and this became, I think, the 4th strip ever published. Same sketchbook. This actually became the ref's first appearance. I'll turn it this way so you can see it better. Now, there was one strip in particular out of the 4 that I initially showed you that there were. I drew 5 roughs that night. And of those 5 roughs, only 4 of those strips ended up making it into finished strips. The other one got left behind. I thought about finishing it in late 2016 and then again in 2017 or 18. But, sometimes it's best to just leave certain things behind if it's not really helping and you already have other stuff to build on. One failed gag or deleted scene, I guess you could say, isn't really going to make much of a difference. So, in that regard, maybe I should start putting on some music. Maybe I should start putting on some music. I feel like the sound of my voice is maybe just a little obnoxious at times. So, whoa! Alright. Don't want the music too loud. Let me just see. Okay. So, first and foremost, in getting started, what are you going to do a webcomic about? I mean, if that's the thing that's keeping you from getting started, sometimes you just got to wing it. Sometimes you got to pull out a sheet of paper and a pencil or a pen and just draw something. Anything. And let's go over to our draw cam. Now, I work on an expensive piece of hardware. Never mind what it is, it doesn't matter. And, I don't know, just start by drawing a straight line. Then draw another straight line, but maybe a little lighter than the first one. Then draw a circle. Then draw another circle. Then draw a whole bunch of circles. There is a method to this madness, as crazy as it sounds. Why am I doing this? I'm a professional cartoonist. I have gotten paid for the work that I've done. Why am I wasting time drawing gobbledygook? Because the point of this particular exercise is to get yourself comfortable with the flow of drawing. Now, since I've often heard the term, particularly by theater pipe organist Gaylord Carter, to start your programs with something that you know, I'm going to start by drawing Lucky Zilla. Lucky Zilla celebrates his 25th anniversary this year. I was 10 years old when I created Lucky. I was 11 when I made his very first comic strip, which was left unpublished until 2017. Now, I'm drawing in the color black. You could be drawing in pen, which, if you're just starting out, I recommend, starting in pen. Make mistakes. Better yet, don't make mistakes. If you make a mistake, don't freak out about it. Grab another sheet of paper, start over, or go over the mistake. If you have the undo button available to you, hey, take advantage. So there we go. Yeah, there's Lucky. Now, shapes are your friends. Circles are your friends. Squares, yeah, they can be your friends too. Triangles? Yeah, absolutely. I was gonna draw a pentagon. Yeah, pentagons are your friend too. To a degree. Rhombus. Let's draw a rhombus. I think this is a rhombus. Or a tetrahedron or something. Or you could draw a stop sign. I know it's technically an octagon, but I'm calling it a stop sign because what the hell? Now you're like, Rich, I thought you said that, you were going to help us build characters. Well, I am. Let's look at a character you might or might not be familiar with, and you tell me whether or not you recognize him outright. He is one of my old favorites. I'm still trying to get the hang out of drawing some of his more modern look and aesthetic, because he's changed quite a lot as Lucky has changed over the years. Now, Sonic is one of the things that I credit with getting me into comics, because I read the Archie Sonic comics growing up. And a friend of mine, Paul Castiglia, was actually one of the early editors of the book. Great guy, very knowledgeable, and he also loves slapstick comedy films, such as those starring Stan Laurel and Oliver Hardy. Very rarely do I ever talk about Sonic with him because we're having too much fun talking about other things that are not comics related, such as some of Stan and Ollie's best moments and whatever. But I'll nerd out on silent film and slapstick comedians on another episode. Now, Sonic is a series of circles, squares to a degree, triangles, and lines. That's all it is. I mean, you want to make it out to be anything other than that, I guess that could be one of the things that's inhibiting you from starting. Now, I am not the kind of teacher that just breaks stuff down according to how many heads tall something is. I mean, there are books that do that, and I recommend that you get a hold of those books, whatever they are. I can't name any off the top of my head because I don't consider myself very well read. I'm just not a very good reader. Even though I write books and I write comics, and it's to my detriment. But if you feel like you're better read than I am, by all means, look around for drawing books. They can't hurt. I have several drawing books that I look at from time to time because I'm curious about the techniques. I'm not so much interested in copying techniques because you don't want to get too distracted from what it is that you're trying to create. Whatever that may be. So, now, we're going to get back to Sonic in a minute because... Or should we? Should we get back to Sonic? You know, I'm going to change up the program just a little bit. So I was going to do this after. And it's fine, you know, we can... We'll get through it one way or another. So as you saw, Sonic is really not terribly difficult to draw. But when you're creating a character, when you're trying to figure out how to draw a character, it's a good idea to reference stuff that has already been made with him. One thing that I highly recommend doing is Google searching model sheets of the character that have been used in animation over the years, in video games in particular, and I'm sure there's a lot of that for Sonic because he's only been in video games for close to 3 decades. So there's a lot of material that's out there. And when I say get comfortable with drawing the character, I mean draw him in poses, making faces that maybe you yourself would make or that you think he would make. Get comfortable drawing the character. Get yourself a sketchbook and just go nuts. Confident. We got some mirth in there. I'm laughing. I'm going to do angry. And some of what helps, especially if you're new at this, is either getting a mirror or if you have a smartphone, take pictures. Use that as reference. Try to break down what you see in the face. And when I'm done drawing this angry pose, that's precisely what I'm going to do. Okay. So what do we got here? Now let's draw this again. When you think angry, you're kind of hunched over a little bit. If you need a line of expression that is something like this, just draw a line. You hunch over. When you're angry, you're tense. So there you go. And frowning a little bit. Maybe the nose is slightly extended, but it's straight, very angular. The chin is kind of dropping a little bit. And because your jawbone goes down and not up, as you might be led to believe from something like this, do you see this part of my face going up like... After a while, like, let's say you did that for an hour, back of your... the top back of your neck would start to hurt. you're angry, your eyebrows like curve in such a way. Since Sonic kind of doesn't have eyebrows, this is what we get, and it, maybe his eyelids are a bit clenched. He's pissed. Show the teeth. Show the gums too. Perhaps he's really just that angry. Like he's about to Hulk out. Lips, very important. And the spines. Curve that up. Maybe not quite what I did here. And it also doesn't hurt to, have angry lines of expression, maybe smoke coming out of his ears like he's about to blow. Because why not? Maybe he's kind of snorting like a bull about to charge. If we were going to draw the body, which we're not, we're going to move on. You would have him kind of hunched over like... Maybe I'll switch cameras so you can see what it is that I'm talking about. I gotta relax, I'm freaking out the cat. So, I'd say I'm pretty comfortable drawing Sonic. Now, if you'll just bear with me for about 45 seconds, I'll be right back. Okay, so we're back again. I'm back again. Someone is back again. Oh, excuse me. Let's see who's watching. Okay, so I'm comfortable drawing Sonic. And now, early on, before I created Lucky Zilla, and as I was getting into the Sonic the Hedgehog comics that were published by Archie, I became upset. I was entranced by, these very simple stories. So at a certain point, I'm jumping around too much. I'm talking faster than I can think. I wanted to get the whole series because I was missing issues left and right. And I couldn't find them anywhere. I found out later on that they did some very short print runs of the books. Even later on, when the series was in production for 8 years, and they had done over 100 issues, the print runs seemed to be like one and done. And you can't get the Sonic Archie comics now. And if you do, They're usually very expensive. Sorry, just had to fix my camera and something else. So, I thought to myself, maybe I'll do my own Sonic comics, just to kind of complete my collection. Let's also get comfortable drawing Sonic's nemesis, the evil Dr. Ivo Robotnik. One of the designs of Robotnik that I love is that which was done by Milton Knight. I hope he doesn't kill me for going on about his version of Robotnik. But it's just so great. Milton did a hell of a job. And if he ever watches this, Milton, I'm sorry I brought up Robotnik. But dude, you killed it. You killed it. That's not exactly his version. That's my approximation of his version. But now what we're going to do is we're going to start getting into situations. Now, I'm going to change this slightly because we're going to get into layout. Now, the thing that helped me get through the first several weeks of Lucky, actually even more than that, was what I like to call the 8-panel rule. What you do is you take, let's say, an 11 by 17 sheet of paper, or if you're one of those rich kids fortunate enough to have access to the Adobe software in Adobe InDesign, what you're going to do is you're going to make a document that is 11 by 17, 17 by 11 rather, that has margins of 1/4 inch on each side, and 4 columns with a gutter of 1/4 inch each. You create that, you go and you create guides, and you're going to add 2 rows with the same gutter of 1/4 inch. And what you end up with, as you see in this example, is an equal amount of real estate for up to 8 panels. Each panel measures just under 4 inches wide by 5 1/8 inch tall. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to fill all 8 panels. Perhaps your action starts with a double wide panel and ends with a double wide panel. Or perhaps somewhere along the lines you have little close-ups or what have you, and this isn't exactly to scale of what I normally use. Perhaps you have something along the lines of this. I mean, I'd avoid something like this, but I'm just giving an example. Because with 8 panels, you can do a lot. Just don't overwhelm yourself unnecessarily. And where necessary, if you think it's going to be hard to read, draw some arrows. Now, what exactly are we going to have Sonic doing? Well, I have some stuff written down. Perhaps we can create a scenario where Robotnik is chasing Sonic, Sonic humiliates him, and as a result, let me start that over again.
Hi, Sebastian.
My good buddy, artist Sebastian Bonet is here. Definitely follow his work. He's really, really good at what he does. He is also one of the people behind In Beyond Con, which is coming up in August. And I very highly recommend checking that out. It's at, oh boy, hang on one second. In Beyond Con. InBeyondCon.com. Bash, if you want to throw a link in the comments for people to come check that out. It's all online, obviously, because of COVID. Let's say we're going to have Sonic humiliate Robotnik. Robotnik is, needless to say, upset about it, but then he gets an idea. And we're going to go from there. So, in the first panel, which we're going to have, we're going to draw this out in Adobe Illustrator. I'm just going to make some loose toothpick sketches. Sonic thumbing his nose at the doctor. The spine's going the other way, and him revving up speed and such. Have maybe his ship exploding or some nonsense. I've been drawing the Eggomatic for I don't know how many years. Robotnik is not happy. I don't know if you can see that. Let me bring back the legit draw cam for a second. Actually, no, I'm not going to. I'm not going to, because there's good reason why. I have more than one piece of software open right now, and I want to be able to show that off. He's waving his arms, maybe he's cursing, maybe something. And then, through this, he gets an idea. I'm going to add the details a little bit later, but, you know, his ship is definitely breaking down. Let's see. I'll have him waltz on in there. We'll do nicer roughs of this in a little bit. And then at the end, for our punchline, so to speak, I'm not necessarily really trying to be funny with any of this. I'm just trying to show the creative process. My humor is really dry on this one. We got Sonic speeding down the way. About to come over a loop-de-loop. And Robotnik is mounted Excuse me just a moment. I will be right back. Hello? Hang on just a second. Sorry guys, that was for my my eyeglasses appointment on Wednesday. Just wanted to make sure that there wasn't anything wrong. God forbid. Okay, so where were we? So we got Dr. Robotnik on a motorcycle. At the end of a loop-de-loop. I might need to make that a little bit more obvious. Okay. So let's see. In maybe about 6 minutes, we've got a very rough idea of what we want to do. And if you have been here since I put up my roughs from the early Lucky Story strips, sometimes that could be all it takes to get started. Really very simple. The hard part is, of course, you know, making the stuff look pretty. So why don't we go ahead and do that? Alright, so we got this. Maybe we can clean this up a little bit. Yeah. Alright, draw can. I could draw classic Sonic, and this would be over a lot faster, but I think I'm going to draw modern Sonic. Just because the whole purpose for me doing Drezen draws in the first place was to give myself some sort of a challenge. So here it is. I've been drawing this character for so many years. You would think that I have it down to a science, but for the most part, I can draw them without model sheets. Every now and again, I choose to, just for the sake of being on model. So you never know. I don't know what it is, maybe it's the need for instant gratification, but I mean, this kind of stuff you don't just get overnight. And I don't expect any of the, and you shouldn't expect any of this to help you instantly become the greatest comic strip artist since Charles Schultz or Milton Caniff or some of the best modern day cartoonists like Lynn Johnston and what the hell's the guy's name that does Mutts? I can't remember, but I think it's Patrick something. You shouldn't look to be the next Walt Disney. It's good to have ambition, but at the same time, don't let it get the better of you. And I think I'm going to have this arm down. I'm going to draw the head separately and then just kind of put it on there. Extra part of the jaw. Use your judgment. Drawing characters, established characters with heads that look a little too big. This is one of the reasons why, I highly recommend learning digital, because there is a lot of flexibility. And I think for the moment, let's just try to stay on task. And we'll worry about the technology later on. So it's the technique that's more important. And if you're working digital, I recommend, we'll change the sneaker up too. I recommend drawing in layers, and of course making sure that you use a different color instead of black for the roughs. This way they're a lot easier to see through to when you have to go back and ink that stuff. Which may sound redundant if you're doing it digitally, but the more and more you go on about the technical aspect, the more time you're wasting that you could be creating. Hands can be very difficult to draw. Just do your best. Trace your own hand. Break down your fingers. Well, I shouldn't say that. Break down your hand according to articulation. I'm just speeding through this right now, pun intended, because I've had this in my head for like the last hour. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put that up against his nose. So he's thumbing his nose, you know, like... Some of you are maybe too young to remember that gesture. There we go. So we got our Sonic. And let's draw our Dr. Robotnik. Now, vehicles can be very distressing. Notice how... You might notice that I haven't discussed backgrounds in any detail. There's a good reason why, and we'll save that for a little bit later. Let's start denting up the ship because thing is, he's just been defeated. Maybe we'll break this light. Maybe we'll break the windshield too as soon as we draw it. Because, well, you know, nothing lasts forever. When you're trying to learn how to draw facial expressions, I highly recommend taking some acting classes. And that may sound strange because, well, in comics, you're supposed to draw expressions. Well, draw from real life. That's the best advice I think I can give on that. I took drama lessons when I was much younger, and they helped me, even though I decided the stage wasn't really for me. But I learned pantomime. I recommend watching silent films. Thank you, Nerds of the Round and Sebastian Bonet, for the shout out and the share. Greatly appreciated as always. Yeah, he's very much not happy right here. This is gonna sound blasphemic, but I kind of prefer the Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog over the Saturday morning show. I mean, the Saturday morning show was wonderful. Still is. I still hold it in very high regard. But at the same time, there's a certain charm to Adventures. Alright, so we got that down. You know, I think we're going to leave this rough alone, but I think we're going to clean this up a bit. And we're also going to make use of this version of Robotnik's, shall we say, assets. This Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog is very slapstick heavy. I chose a very difficult pose to do. Definitely learn your anatomy. Definitely take figure drawing classes. I'm still trying to understand anatomy, and I've been drawing since I was 3 years old. Something going on here. What do we got? Ooh. Yeah. My girlfriend just texted me that there's an overturned car on one of the main roads near where we live. I hope whoever is in that wreck is able to walk away from it. Because let me tell you something. You get into that kind of scenario, and I almost was at certain points in my life. You'd be lucky if you get out of it. This is where I'm kind of going to cheat a little bit. Another reason to work digital is you can do stuff like this. Yeah, then you're worrying about the shoulders. Shoulders are there. Just fudge it a little. Just a little. He's walking into some place. Police Academy, I'll clean that up. I'll show you how. Now what I need is an image of a motorcycle. So, what do we want to do about that? Well, honestly, Google it. All of these look pretty complicated, don't they? To draw, but it's better than tracing over one of these things and, you know, getting caught for it. Not the best idea in the world. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to use this as a reference. And we're going to break it down ever so slightly using certain shapes. Three-quarter views are perhaps the most challenging thing you will ever draw, but I encourage you to give them a shot as often as possible. Because if you can get good at doing three-quarter views, you can draw anything. And forget about being good. Worry about being comfortable drawing something. get comfortable with the things that you draw. And that should help take a lot of the pressure that you feel off. I'm gonna get myself on camera here only because I just feel the need to be. Let's also be very straight with you right now. There is a very good chance that many of you will never be successful in comics. And I encourage you to try. Just understand that just the way the world works is that if everyone were successful, then there'd be nothing to fight for. Unfortunately, there's always something to fight for. And there's a very good chance that you are going to crash and burn and fail constantly. In fact, let me go one step further. You are going to fail. And you are going to fail a lot before you come across a way of doing things that makes you successful, or you just happen to be in the right place at the right time and become successful. Even then, there's really no guarantees that any of that is going to happen. You should do this because you love it, not just because it's a way in which you can earn money. I mean, money is important, but definitely get someplace where get some kind of employment that pays you at least enough of a livable wage so that you can have that to fall back on while you're pursuing your art career. That doesn't look terrible, but it should serve a purpose. Now the question is, how are we going to get Dr. Robotnik on there? And the answer is, I'm going to draw him on there. Glad I had no plans to go out today. Whatever it is, knowing Jericho Turnpike, that's going to take some time to clear. Now we're going to draw Sonic for the last panel. Would you believe that I planned another exercise after this? But there's a good reason. There's a very good reason why. I draw in Adobe Illustrator for the reason being that I want to be able to expand and shrink my work without losing quality. Like if I were to do what I just did in Photoshop, I would have lost clarity. And that's a big problem. Because then, you go back to ink it, and you're trying to figure out, well, how did I do this? I mean, what does this look like now? And you're stuck there for an extra 20 minutes that you don't need to be. Because Photoshop is just one of those programs that everyone has, but not necessarily knows how to use. Now, we have our 4 panels. We don't have backgrounds as of yet. So what we're going to do is we're going to make them. I'm going to shift gears for a little bit to talk about something else you should consider. Now I realize I'm throwing a lot of this stuff at you. And I don't, again, do not expect that my being here today with you, sharing all this, will overnight get you started in making webcomics. It's probably not going to. That's just not realistic. And I hate that word realistic. But that's also just not practical. I mean, this, as the title suggests, I want to encourage you to take the first steps. That's what I believe this episode of the show will help you to do. Excuse me a sec. Be back in just a moment. We have a little zoo going on here. We got 3 cats that live here, plus a dog. Why don't you lay down on your blankie? Oh, silly dog. Bless you. She must be having an allergy attack. I'm gonna have to take her for a walk in a little bit. So let's see. Got everything in there that I kind of wanted to. So now let's look at the 3D software. And I know what you might be thinking. Rich, you're throwing a lot at me with this. Now you're talking about 3D? I don't know 3D. I barely know 2D. Well, let me tell you something about backgrounds. You say you struggle with drawing characters. How do you think you're going to fare with drawing backgrounds? So I'll tell you something right now. I hate drawing backgrounds. I despise drawing backgrounds. In some cases, I refuse to draw backgrounds. The chief reason why is you draw a background, put the character in it. You spend all this time on drawing this background before you even put the characters in it. And for whatever reason, it just doesn't work. Now you gotta redraw the damn background. Whereas in 3D, say this is your background, and it doesn't quite work. Well, change the angle. Change the camera angle. This is a 3D set that was originally purchased from turbosquid.com. It's a royalty-free it's a site where people create and can buy royalty-free 3D models and other assets. So let me show you what Turbo Squid looks like. Lay down, pup. It's turbosquid.com. You can find just about everything on here. Let's say you want trucks. Now, there's stuff on here that's free. There's stuff that you have to pay for. But then there's the question of what software do you have? Now, I'm using 3D Studio Max. So that's a very expensive piece of software. Let me tell you. So, what I recommend if you're just getting started is to take a look at an open source program called Blender. I don't really know much about it. A friend of mine, Nick Pizzega, has used it and is still messing around with it. And I mean, he is a research machine, so I'm confident that he's going to get the hang of it at some point. But from what I've seen so far, I like the direction he's taken. And I believe my buddy Sebastian has used Blender as well. But the name of the game is, minimize the workload if you can. So this isn't the sequence I wanted to use for the Sonic one. It's thinking. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to reset this. And I'm going to go into the little BS Green Hill Zone thing that I have going on here. Now I have it kind of all set up. I was going to show you basically how to do a very basic 3D model of a loop, but then I realized I barely know how to do that, so I'm just going to go into it with it pre-made prior to the episode. So let's see. In the case of our comic, what you're going to want to do is you're going to get the dimensions that you have, and you're going to multiply each dimension by 300. That's the number of pixels. And you're going to put that into your width and height. And what I've come up with in the past is 1200 pixels wide by 1538 pixels tall. Now that's just for this panel of this aspect ratio. For everything else, do the math. You got to do the math based on the width and height of your panel. Okay, that's what we end up with. Okay. Now we're going to forget about the second panel because that doesn't really have a background. Now you might find yourself in a very awkward position. Like I do sometimes here in 3ds Max for those of you who have it. Where you need to adjust certain parameters like the lens, field of vision, things of that nature. I mean, in the case of the loop-de-loop, I want to get Robotnik at the base of it. Now, waiting for Sonic to like give him a ticket for going too fast. That actually was the subject of an episode of Adventures of Sonic, where Sonic was speeding, got caught, and had to go to jail. As stupid as that sounds, like, who the hell puts Sonic the Hedgehog in jail? Well, it worked. And we have a tiny problem that I am going to solve. We're gonna put Robotnik like maybe right there. Okay. Okay. We're going to switch back to the regular... No, actually, no. We're not going to switch back to the regular draw cam. You'll have to bear with me, folks. I'm not entirely used to explaining the stuff that I do all the time. Draw as much as you possibly can. Anything you can't draw, use an outside element, use stock photo websites like for a sky, because I have saved a whole bunch of images of skies over the years. I'm just gonna go right to. Let's see, where is it? Pardon me for a second. I'm just going to go right to one of my old images. And I'm going to basically create a few more panels by clicking and dragging. But first, let's put in the sky. Let's also manipulate it how we may need to. Let's get our background in there. There we go. We're going to do the same thing for this panel. And perhaps this one, just for consistency's sake. We're going to move the sky around a little bit so that this way it's not overly obvious to the reader what we're doing. So if you're going to be cheap, make sure the reader doesn't know it. To quote Frank Capra as best I can, because I can't remember the whole quote, the moment you show how something is done, it takes the viewer, the reader, out of the story. So you kind of don't want to do that. That's along the lines of what he said. And Frank Capra is best remembered for the Christmas classic It's a Wonderful Life, starring the great James Stewart as the character George Bailey. I don't know. I'm going to see. I want to take her for a walk, but at the same time, the sky's probably going to open up. I was thinking about perhaps not inking this, but I'm going to because it would be silly of me not to. Inking is perhaps my favorite part of the production process with comics. I also have to stress that it can be the longest, depending on the level of detail you're going for. Even if you're going for something such as what I'm doing with Sonic the Hedgehog here. Also, sometimes you just gotta zoom out a little bit because it's good to have clarity, but it's also good to have eyesight. Speaking of classes, I have done some continuing ed courses at the School of Visual Arts. I have gotten a lot of great insight from people that work in various industries, and I can't recommend them highly. I know they're going through some stuff right now because 3 of their professors were accused by students of sexual harassment, which I do not tolerate. And the professors that took part in that have been fired, and I'm glad. SVA, so far as I know, is a great school. They've been around forever. I mean, it's a shame that they have that kind of a stain on their reputation. And I appreciate them addressing that and dealing with it and continuing to deal with stuff like that. Because I know a few artists that have so little self-esteem that, I mean, that's the last thing you need to do to someone that has no self-esteem, is to drag them down even further by behaving badly. Getting a tablet like a Wacom is important in helping you develop the pressure that you apply when drawing. I've only used Wacom. I've used an iPad previously, and even though it's drawing on screen, which is fine, I have found the best results, the best ergonomics, the best overall experience with Wacom. And I guess in a way, I'm also spoiled by Wacom. I haven't used X Pen. I haven't used Huion, I think it's pronounced. Although a handful of my fellow artists swear by the Huion, which is all well and good. I know it's a lot cheaper. I know it's I hope you didn't hear that. Silly cat. I know it's a lot more cost effective and everything, but Wacom is just, I guess in a way, Wacom is as much a part of me as I am of it in all the years that I've been using it. And they have a bunch of different models available, not just the Cintiqs. There are also the Intuos models if you really can't afford a Cintiq. But aim for a Cintiq. That's my recommendation. you're going to get the most out of it. Wacom came out with the Cintiq 1, I believe it's called. And it's $400. It's basically bare bones. It doesn't come with an express remote. I don't know if it's compatible or not with it. I just saw a price tag and I'm like, I mean, if you're not going for an iPad and you're looking for your first tablet, I swear by Wacom. I know that there are less expensive options out there, but because I've had such a great experience with Wacom products, I can't recommend them. Oh, there's going to be a storm tonight. At least where I am. What time is it? 4:27. Yeah, I've been at this for a bit. I'm going to be at it for a bit longer, too. I'm telling you. I knew this was going to be a long one, though, to be perfectly honest. So I don't blame myself, I don't blame anybody, you know, this is what it is. The color palette that I have on the left side of this screen, it's an entirely custom color palette that I created for the specific use of the Luckyzilla comic strip. Now the reason why is because when you're looking around for colors instead of drawing, you are wasting so much damn time. I don't know any other nice way to say that. Don't waste time, make the most of it. Got to draw these in. No, that's not a fart cloud. Let's change this actually to red before I crack myself up any more than I already am. I mean, damn. How do you get good at drawing explosions? The same way you get good at drawing almost anything else. Practice, experimentation, and perseverance. And also, get rid of your roughs when you're done with them. Or if you absolutely need to save them, then do so in a different file. Key thing here is keep it moving. Here comes the boom. Here comes the thunder. I don't want to rush too much on here, even though I am kind of rushing. So there's another exercise I want to get into in this same episode. I'd say measure with your eyes as often as you can, and not so much with a ruler. I see a lot of old timers doing that, which is fine if that's what works for you, but do that early on. Do that when you're first getting started, and try not to do that every step of the way. Otherwise, you will get nothing done. I know from experience. Ooh, I made a boo-boo. Hello, dog. Hello, puppy. Come here. I know you don't want to go for a walk when it's raining or when it's thunder. Because then you're going to get the shakes and you're going to be scared. I know, like the dog even knows what I'm saying. I'm going to do Shift Control D just to double check and make sure that I've colored everything in that I need to. That's something I came upon recently and completely by accident. I know what you're probably thinking, you know, this is taking a long time to show off how to make comics and everything, but, and I think maybe, you know, you could have shared some stuff and had some stuff, like, already done. Well, yeah, I could have done that, but the truth is, it takes time to make comics. I'm not making excuses, I'm stating fact. As I forgot that I have to do something with the windshield here. Making comics is not as simple as 1, 2, 3. It's an art form, it's a business, it's a craft. So, if you think of it as a hobby, that's fine. But, let's be real. This isn't even close to real time in terms of me creating my Lucky-Zilla comic strips. Especially nowadays that I'm seasoned with it. I've been doing it for close to 5 years now. You know, I want to grow the strip from where I've taken it thus far. And in order to do that, you have to set certain standards, and you do this as you go along. Like, once you get comfortable putting out material on a regular basis, you have to leave room for improvement. My mouse has been a little funky lately. Oh, you're probably also thinking, hey Rich, why are you using a mouse when you have a $2,000 drawing tablet at your fingertips? 'Cause I feel like it. Okay. Almost forgot. Blurs. Blurs are good. I like blurs. Blue blurs especially. I know some of you love that one. Okay, I'm getting a little weary of this. So what we're gonna do, I hate to cut this a little short, but I really want to get into the next exercise. What I'm doing is I'm taking the panels that we have already and I'm inserting them into our InDesign document. Police Academy. Now what do we do about these guys over here? Let me just flip this for a second and see how it looks. Yeah, that's good. That's what I want. Another advantage to working digital. You get to switch stuff around. Whereas if you're drawing on paper and pencil, I mean, you get a certain level of clarity, which is awesome, and, you know, you never, ever, ever want to underestimate. So I don't care what advances have been made in technology, there's almost nothing like paper and pencil, but you can't limit yourself there. Is the point that I'm making. I am going to have to ink this because I feel unfulfilled if I don't. Why don't we go downstairs and join the dog before it rains? I want to let her out. See now.
Okay. All right. Let me get that going. Let's go downstairs. See how we're looking. Wanna go outside? Go outside, little dog? Come on. Looks like it's starting to go down just a little bit, but I can be out for a few minutes, right? Right. Come on. Don't worry about that. That's fine. I'm here. I'm gonna protect you. See? Come on. Come on. No. Where are you going? Where are you going? Where are you going? Come here. Come here. Melanie. Melanie. Alright, I think this is a lost cause. Alright, come on, pup. No, back. Back, let's go. I tried. I have to do that again later on. I shall expect to see presents. Come on, pup. Hope the audio comes out on this.
Okay. Come here. No. Keep her in here so that she's comfortable. Come on. That's a good girl. That's a good girl. This is Melanie. She belongs to my hopeful future in-laws. And she's a good girl. Right? And she's scared of thunder. And to be honest, I don't blame her. Alright. We get situated here. We'll do some more. All right, let's finish up our Sonic comic strip, which we don't want to leave undone. I know I don't. Good girl. Hang on a sec. I just want to get the dog on here. She's going home tomorrow. She lives 50 miles away. I think he has that circular thing. On his backside, so I'm not going to put it in there. Now, again, there is no quick way to make comics. Make the best use of your time that you can. I know it looks a little ridiculous that I'm drawing something right now, I'm inking something that isn't going to appear in the final panel, but the whole reason why I'm doing it is because in case I decide to change the angle, at least from the character aspect of this, I have the whole thing drawn already, so all I have to do is just move him up or down. And don't overthink stuff. One of the reasons I love I love Illustrator as much as I do, and I prefer to Photoshop, is, as an example, coloring. I mean, you get it to the edge when you use the live paint bucket, unlike the Photoshop paint bucket, which does it almost to the pixel. Because Illustrator uses vector and not really pixels, unless you decide that you want to, for whatever reason, rasterize the image. Illustrator is primarily a vector program. And that's why you're able to scale items without losing quality. Because once it's rasterized, that's it. That's it. End of discussion. It's over. You had your chance. Only thing left to do is just redraw everything. And we don't want to do that. No, do we, puppy? If I'm at this for a while, maybe more people will jump on. I hope. Now, we've got something here that I really don't... Been going on for almost 2.5 hours. I'm starting to lose steam. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the pen tool. And we are going to build this outer facade of this police academy. We're also going to bring down the opacity so that we can see kind of what we're doing underneath. Helpful. It's okay, Dougie. It's okay. I'm going to put it in the windows. that, I believe. If you look through the tools in any of these programs, I encourage you to explore the tools that you perhaps never use and find out what they do. Because you never know. There could be a tool in here that is going to make your life a lot easier so that you don't have to draw every blessed thing all the time, every day, until the end of time. Because some of you know, as well as I do, that this can be a long process. Creating comics. Yes, dog. Go. Let's get that out of here. Out of there, out of wherever. Okay, puppy. I got you. She's a scared of the thunder. I got you. This is one of the more tender moments on Double D. Making sure that the dog is okay. Okay, we want a block font when you're making signs. It really comes in handy. I worked in the sign business for a little bit. And I have found, thankfully not from experience, but I learned very early on in my graphic design career. I mean, when you try to make something out of something that isn't block lettering, it gets to be a nuisance, like, very quickly. There's another reason to use 3D sets, because I wouldn't have to do this. Select it one by one. Little tedious, I know. All this thunder, all this lightning, and it ain't even raining yet. It's okay, Doug. I got you. I shall protect you. Bless you. Alright, now what we're going to do is we're going to go back into InDesign, and we see that our thing is already there, and I forgot to add something, so I'm going to go and add it. It's okay. I'll go in your blankie. No, that doesn't look good. There we go. That's done. Avoid doing tiny panels if you can. The reason I say this is because if you do the math and find a way to do something twice its size, do it. Unless, of course, it exceeds the confines of Illustrator's capabilities, which is, I think you can't make a canvas that's more than 216 inches. Which some of you might be thinking, why would I ever need anything more than 216 inches? Well, you might have to make a sign someday. these things are kind of good to know. Certain things won't be seen in a distance, which is why I'm not getting too overly concerned about the details of Sonic in this particular panel, because he's going to be seen from afar. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw Robotnik first and then the motorcycle. Actually, I don't think I'm going to do that. I'm just going to draw the whole thing. Because I kind of want to move on. We got lyrics in this song. Cool. think that tie looks a trifle ridiculous. There we go. There we go. I've been at this for a bit, haven't I? In a little over 2 hours. I've shown you how coming up with even the stupidest idea can lead to something magical. Now we're going to save this thing, and then we're going to look at it one panel at a time. Give it a second. Okay. Or 2 panels at a time. So there we go. Sonic and Dr. Robotnik. Sonic yucking it up. Robotnik gets an idea, joins the police academy, and then, well, you know. And I made that happen in, let's see, just about 3 hours. Yeah, I don't think we're gonna have time. There was something else I wanted to do. I don't think I'm gonna do it. The reason being, there's just so much more that I have to do these days. Find a full-time job. Find some freelance, because it is not a kind time to be a non-essential worker. So if you'll pardon me for just a few moments, there are some things that I want to leave you with. Okay. The first thing is write down all your ideas. Write them all down. Try not to use Post-its unless you don't have your phone handy, but these things right here, if you have one of these and you're not using it to your advantage, such as keeping notes, taking pictures, then you are missing out on opportunities that you would have with webcomics. In particular, things for backgrounds, photos, your own photos that you won't have to pay royalties on, and also taking notes, writing down little bits and pieces of dialogue. You say you feel you have a really good memory and you think you can just remember everything, and then you don't. It comes time to do that thing and you're like, wait a minute, what was I going to do again? You got to write everything down. You also have to be organized. Let me show you something that I very rarely show anyone. Okay. This right here is a spreadsheet of the LuckyZilla comics that are in progress or upcoming. Now, I don't want you to get too much of a look at it, but I've started using what I call production numbers just so that this way I can reference what a project is, especially if it has a lengthy title, like up, down, all around, and whatever. It's something more than like 4 words, because when you save stuff on a computer and you save it within a folder and then another folder and then another folder, it starts to build up the file path, and that can be a pain in the ass. And you don't want that, because at a certain point you're going to try to save something and it'll tell you that the extension is too long. I tried to explain this to an old boss, and he just kind of looked at me like I had 4 heads. You put a title if you have one. If not, write something a little descriptive of what's happening. But most importantly, your description synopsis. Describe the action that's happening. If it's a story, give a short summary of what happens in the story, or at least what you have so far. Try to give yourself a length, like if it's going to be a certain number of panels or a certain number of parts. Ultimately, you won't know that for sure until you start doing stories. So for the moment, just try to plan in terms of panels. Give what stage of production you're at. If you've thought about it, just put down that you've plotted it. If it's just an idea and you don't have the full gag or story ready, then put down concept. And then you put in the status, like at what stage is the item in? At what stage? I'm trying to think of the best word to use. Like how close it is to moving on to the next stage. And most importantly, when you're publishing a weekly webcomic, you want to put down the publishing date. Get familiar with a calendar. Get a physical calendar. And start planning. Like once you've done your first several strips. When you start creating your strips, I recommend, before you even publish one of them, create 8 strips. They don't have to be connected in any way, shape, or form. Figure 8 situations. I mean, come up with more, just in case, those 8 situations, for whatever reason, don't work, and you decide to go in a different direction. It's like I said much earlier in this show, I came up with like 5 different scenarios for lucky strips on the first day that I actively started pursuing this as a webcomic, and and of those 5, 4 of them made it and the other one didn't. And that just happens sometimes. Which is why, at least in the rough stages, you want to get stuff down in a cohesive, in at least a manner that, okay, this person's here, that person's there, this one's happy, this one's sad, okay, next panel. This one is yelling at that person, this person isn't taking them seriously, something happens in the next panel, and then there's like a little exchange between them. One's befuddled and the other one's like, I told you so! Let's see. What else? In terms of software, yes, the Adobe software is very expensive. 3D Max is very expensive. But there are certain things in place that will help make the tools a bit more affordable. Tomorrow I start taking a class at SVA. And if you take a course, or if you are a student at an accredited university, which SVA is, then you might be entitled to student discounts on certain items, software, etc. Look into it on Adobe's website, Autodesk's website for Sketchbook, 3ds Max, Maya, things of that nature. And at the very least, keep a sketchbook and try. Think and do. Don't just think. Don't think too much, don't overthink, because it's going to drive you crazy. Thought without action is like waking up from the best dream ever, and like that, it's gone. You have like the best dream ever in particular, write it down. You might need it someday. I know I did. So with that said, we're going to end this near 3-hour romp by saying stay drawsome. Be drawsome. And again, our condolences to the Couch family during this difficult time.